If you're a musician and you've been wondering whether the Insta360 Luna Ultra deserves a spot in your gear setup, especially if you're looking to record yourself on stage while using the detachable screen to monitor your shot, you might be asking the same question I had. Will it actually work reliably in a live music environment? Well, I put it to the test during several worship band rehearsals at my church, and while there are definitely some things I like about it, I also ran into a few questions and a few issues that I think musicians should be aware of. The two biggest problems I encountered were connectivity and wireless interference. Let's talk about it. But before we do, what is cooking? It's ya boy Doy. Now let's get to it. For my first test, I brought the Luna Ultra to church because I wanted to see how it would perform in a real-world setting. Our church is a medium-sized church, and I assumed the distance between the stage and the sound booth wouldn't be enough to create any noticeable latency issues. So I placed the camera near the booth and headed up to the stage. But as soon as I checked the detachable screen, I immediately received a weak signal recording unaffected warning. Technically, the camera was still recording and I could still see myself on the screen, but the image was extremely choppy and it was heavily pixelated. That was the first major issue: connectivity. At times when I tried using the joystick on the remote to move the camera, nothing would happen. Then a few seconds later, it would suddenly respond. The connection felt inconsistent and very unreliable. What surprised me was that the camera wasn't very far away. The distance was roughly like around 10 meters or about 32 feet, which is well within Insta360's advertised operating range of around 20 meters. Because of that, I wasn't expecting to encounter these types of signal problems. I also struggled with tracking performance since the screen feed was so choppy, I couldn't tell whether the camera was actually tracking me while I moved around. I only discovered later, after reviewing the footage, whether tracking had worked correctly or not. Now, unfortunately, connectivity wasn't my biggest problem. The bigger issue was audio interference. Honestly, I can live with a laggy screen. As long as I can roughly see myself in the frame, I can work around it. But audio interference is a completely different story. As musicians, especially those of us using in-ear monitors, we rely heavily on clear and consistent audio. The better we hear, the better we perform, and the better we play our instrument. At least that's how it works for me. During rehearsal, the audio in my in-ear monitors kept cutting in and out, and sometimes I would lose audio entirely for several seconds at a time. It became so distracting that it started affecting my playing. Now, the situation got so frustrating that during the actual worship service, I decided to turn off the Luna Ultra remotely. The moment I did, my in-ear monitor mix immediately returned to normal and worked flawlessly for the rest of the service. Now, it is important to understand the environment. We had 4 vocalists using wireless microphones, 4 wireless in-ear monitors, plus an additional wireless systems for myself and the keyboard player. That means there were roughly 10 wireless devices operating simultaneously, and maybe even more if we count all of the iPads that were on stage. We were also using the X5 wireless in-ear monitor system, so there was already a lot of wireless traffic happening in the room. Because of that, I believe the Luna Ultra was competing for bandwidth and contributing to the interference issues. So if you're playing in a band that uses wireless in-ear monitors, it's definitely something to keep in mind. For my second test, I decided to place the Luna Ultra directly on stage with me. This time, the camera was significantly closer. I expected all of the signal issues to disappear. Surprisingly, I still received the weak signal warning. The video feed wasn't nearly as pixelated as before, but the connection still felt inconsistent. The joystick controls remained somewhat laggy, and there were moments where commands would take longer than expected to register. When everything works, it worked great, but when it didn't, it became frustrating pretty quickly. One area where the camera performed much better was tracking. Once I activated tracking, it followed me consistently and did a surprisingly good job. If you're someone who loves to move around on stage like me while performing, the tracking feature could be incredibly useful. But in my case, as part of the worship band, I don't move around very much during service. Most of the time I stay in one area because at the end of the day, the focus isn't on me, it's on God. Still, it's nice knowing the feature works when you need it. As for the audio interference, I experienced a completely different result during the second test. This time, I switched to a wired monitoring setup. Alright, so we're here once again. We're going to be practicing for tomorrow. We have this thing called Worship Night. I want to test out again the Luna Ultra, so let's see how well it would work. Hopefully we won't get any audio interference this time. I think we won't because I'm connected to a wired system right now. So a wired in-ear monitor system. Thankfully, I experienced zero audio interference. That was a huge relief and confirmed my suspicion that the issues were likely related to multiple wireless systems operating at the same time. Another thing I'd like to see improved is battery life. When using the detachable screen, the battery seems to drain much faster than I expected. I'm in the middle of a battery test, but I don't want to give exact numbers until I review them. I do, however, want to point out that there were times when it felt like the camera's battery dropped surprisingly quickly. Moving forward though, I'll make sure both the camera and the remote are fully charged before each session and pay closer attention to the battery performance. So where does that leave us? After multiple tests, my experience with the Insta360 Luna Ultra has been mixed. In one scenario, the connection was weak, the screen was laggy and pixelated, and the device caused enough interference with my wireless in-ear monitors that I couldn't realistically use it during a live service. But in another scenario, using a wired monitoring setup, it eliminated the interference completely, and the tracking performance was actually quite impressive. However, the remote still reported weak signal warnings and occasional lag, even though the camera was a lot closer and on stage with me. So if you're a musician considering the Luna Ultra for stage use, there are some things you should be aware of. Your experience may vary depending on your environment, the number of wireless device being used around you, and how far are you from the camera. But I'm gonna continue testing it in different situations, and if I discover anything new, I'll be sure to share it in a future video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.